I'm Nicole. Welcome to Get Me Out of Grad School. Yes, if you're new here, the channel name is a joke, but we know all jokes are rooted in truth. Alright, so this video is all about my application process for grad school and how I did it, because it was a roller coaster journey, crazy thing, whatever cliche you can possibly think of. I'm thinking about this right now because I am being onboarded to my program's admissions committee, which means that I am going to be reviewing applications of people who are applying to the program that I did last year. And it's just really brought me back to the whole process that I went through. So I am going to get started. So I am going to walk you through the whole thing in as short amount of time as I possibly can, because honestly, I could talk about grad school forever and ever and ever. But I'm going to explain quickly how I decided what programs to apply to, because that was the whole process, how I put my application together, how the process actually works, because there were multiple stages, not just submitting my application, but interviews and things, and then the results and how I chose where I was going. So let's start with part one, how I decided what to do with my life. So when I was in grade 10, I decided I wanted to be an engineer, and specifically I looked back in like my career studies scrapbook that we had to do, and apparently I wanted to be a clinical biomedical engineer, which is somewhat kind of what I do now, but not at all also at the same time. I realized that in Canada, not a lot of the undergraduate engineering programs have actual biomedical engineering programs. Some of them do. Waterloo does, I believe. University of Toronto does. I very much did not want to go to Waterloo or the University of Toronto. Very much no, no, no. I ended up going to Queen's University, which has a general first year, which was perfect for me. I loved that experience. In second year, I chose to go into computer engineering, and then around third year, or in between third year and fourth year, I had a massive crisis. So I'd always kind of had the idea in the back of my mind that I would do my undergraduate degree, and then I would do a master's in biomedical engineering, because in Canada, if you want to be a biomedical engineer, you kind of have to have a master's. Now, I am not a biomedical engineer. Let me just fix that up there. I did my undergrad in computer engineering. So if you're like, biomedical engineering is all like mechanics and stuff like that. It is, but increasingly there's become a role for computer people in biomedical engineering. AI, obviously, biostatistics, everything like that is up and coming in medicine, and honestly, we've only just scratched the surface of computer and software helping us improve our health systems. So, that was what I thought I wanted to do. Then in the summer of 2018, I was supposed to use the summer to work on these applications that for grad school, and then I honestly found myself completely unsure of where I wanted to apply. I had a job that now I am so grateful for. I had an undergraduate summer research award from the National Science something of Canada. It's called NSERC. I was given an award to work with a prof doing artificial intelligence research in the summer of 2018. And that job was a godsend and opened so many doors for me, but I hated it. It wasn't the prof's fault. I don't even think in retrospect it was AI's fault. The prof was fairly new. He was setting up his new lab. So basically I was given a choice between working in a non-air conditioned cubicle with like 3 other guys doing electrical and computer engineering research that summer, and no one who was in my lab was on the floor where I was given the cubicle, or I could work in the air conditioned office at a monitor by myself. So I was expected basically to work, or I thought I was expected to work 34 and a half, because we had a 30-minute team meeting each week, hours by myself on the top floor of this building in a room that was air conditioned, doing something that I'd never done before. I didn't know anything about AI. I hadn't even taken a class in probability, which if you know anything about machine learning, you definitely need probability and statistics to be able to understand anything in AI machine learning. So I was overwhelmed, I felt very isolated, and I felt very scared of failure and saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, because I didn't want them to fire me, I guess. And it was really bad. I was very stressed out. I was super anxious about it. Was not a good fit, and I was so scared to address it, knowing what I know now. I should have talked to my supervisor. He was an incredibly nice guy, and he was pretty young for a professor. He would have helped me and helped me have a better summer, but I didn't talk to him and say that I was having problems. Anyways, I freaked out and I decided maybe I don't like technical work at all, maybe I don't like engineering, maybe I'm in the wrong field. So I visited the Career Center for Counseling, I visited the engineering counselor, there's a counselor embedded in the engineering department at my school, and I cried a lot and I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. At the time, I had a big interest in effective altruism. I know this story is kind of going all over the place. Basically, it's about putting your money to the best use. There is a website called 80,000 Hours that's associated with effective altruism that's all about careers that can help you do a lot of good. So I was combing through that website, going through LinkedIn, doing all this research, and eventually I became interested in technology policy. So technology policy is basically policy, like the people who work for the government mostly, or in think tanks who put together like policy. So technology policy can be anything from green energy policy to AI regulation, which is so needed, to cybersecurity and privacy rules, tons of things. Even rules about like smart cars come into play. I became super interested in this, and I started researching programs. And so over that summer, I made my list. Top of my list was the MIT Technology Policy Program. Then came the Cambridge Technology Policy Program. These two, though they had the same name, were very, very different. MIT TP was a 2-year engineering degree that was very focused on research. What really appealed to me was that you could take policy classes over at Harvard, and that sounded super cool. The Cambridge one was offered by the School of Business. It was a master's of philosophy, not engineering, and it was more focused on kind of like a consulting business outlook of it. I also had on my list the Delft Engineering and Policy Analysis program, which really focused on problem modeling and applying modeling and engineering skills to big real-world problems. I was also interested in Stanford for something, and I think it might have been like engineering management, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what I applied for there. Kind of maybes on my list were the Johns Hopkins Center for Bioengineering, Innovation, and Design, which I found in second year and I was super interested in because you got to do clinical immersions with hospitals, do a big global trip to learn about global health, and there was a lot of really cool stuff there that I thought fit what I wanted to do. Bioengineering at UBC, University of British Columbia, and then an embedded systems program that was split between 3 universities in Europe. It was like you could either do a year in Germany and a year in Sweden, or a year in Germany and a year in London or something. Honestly, I think I was more interested in living in Sweden and Germany than I was in the program, but it was on my list anyways. So after that point, I did a lot of research. I attended info sessions. I emailed and or set up calls with current students. Like I would email the admin person and be like, could I please jump on a call with XYZ? I'd really like to hear their perspective. And also did Zoom calls with people who were like professionals in the technology policy. I think it was the policy field. So I talked to someone who worked in technology policy at the UN. I talked to a Queen's grad who worked in policy in the Canadian government, and I just found these connections literally through LinkedIn. And I basically just Googled people, searched people in technology policy and introduced myself and was like, hey, can I have an info session with you and talk about what this means? I talked to someone else as well, someone who was entry level in the Canadian government sort of policy, one who was more, I think, health, and then someone who was more technology, but she was higher up and had more seniority. So step number 2, I started putting my application together. So this is the thing that everybody always wants to know. I admit I wanted to know it, so I am gonna tell you my entire application. Luckily, I'd done the GRE, which if you don't know what it is, it's this really annoying test that you have to take if you apply to graduate school in the US. It's basically like the grade 10 literacy test, like standardized English stuff, and then grade 9 math that's just like amped up so it seems really hard and you have 30 seconds to answer the questions. It's horrible. Anyways, I'd done the GRE the previous year, so my scores were in the analysis section that literally nobody cares about. I got 6.0 out of 6.0, so I was 100th percentile. In verbal, I got a 162, which was like the 90-something percentile. It's out of 170, but it's the percentiles that matter, obviously. And then in quantitative, I also got a 162, but that was like 80, mid to low 80th percentile. So like, okay, but not amazing. And I didn't realize how much these scores actually mattered, because in Canada we don't have to write SATs or like standardized tests or anything to get into university. Our universities never see scores from the standardized test that we actually write, so I was like, yeah, I have to do this thing. And then I realized in fall that it actually mattered, and I did consider rewriting it before applications were due. I think the MIT one was either due at the end of November or the end of October. I ultimately decided against that. Okay, so then we have grades. I went to a top 5, was top 3 for a while, now it's top 5, Canadian University. That might be a point of contention. I think it's a pretty good university for engineering. I had a GPA of 4.18 out of 4.3, which I can't remember what that translates to in a 4.0 GPA scale. Basically, I was top of my program in computer engineering. I was top of my program when I applied, and I graduated number 1 in computer engineering. So then came extras. So I'd done 2 summer internships at Siemens in the research and development department. I also had that summer AI research, again, amazing. I had a lot of TA positions. I was a TA for a mechanical engineering class, which is so random because I'm a computer engineer. An economics class, which I will tell you, I threw that so hard at anything that policy was involved in. I was like, I TA economics. It was engineering economics. I'm pretty sure it was like nothing related to policy, but that's okay. And then I was a project manager for the first years at Queen's, and basically they get a project with a client. So our client was the Ottawa Art Gallery. I was the project manager managing 2 first-year teams. I did all the communication between the art gallery. I mentored the team, blah, blah, blah. I also started a choir when I was at university. I attended a couple of conferences, but honestly, I kind of had a double degree in drinking, so I didn't really do anything besides that, to be completely honest. It was fun. It was social. It's university. Then come reference letters. So I had a reference letter from my prof who I worked with over the summer, and he was very complimentary and wonderful to me. There was a prof who I was her class rep in second year, which literally just means that I'm supposed to deliver the prof surveys to the class while the prof isn't there one day. She comes like 10 minutes late. Have everybody collect them, like fill them out, collect them, and bring them to an office. But she really wanted to like get feedback from the class and stuff, so I took a lot of initiative in developing a relationship with her, and she's an amazing prof who I love. She wrote me a great reference letter. Not that I've read it, but she said it was good. I had some reference letters from industry. So when I worked at Siemens, I got the head of the department and my direct supervisor to write me sweet little letters just about my technical skills, basically. And then eventually I got a reference letter from the economics professor that I TA'd for. However, I didn't include that letter in some of my earlier applications, and I think that that was a bit of a mistake. I was nervous to ask him, so I didn't ask him until December, at which point the MIT one, the Cambridge one were already submitted. And honestly, that was a mistake because I don't think that the industry letters had much sway or pull at all. Then there was the personal statement, which I spent so much time on. I went to the Career Center, I had them read my drafts and edit it. There were a lot of drafts. I think they were pretty good, and they were very personalized to each school. So, number 3, thank God everything was not due at once. I think MIT was due first, then I submitted the Cambridge one because it was rolling applications. After that came Hopkins, and then kind of in a row, everything else. Because I'd done like the first 3, I pretty much just pulled from those to fill out the other applications. And there we go. So while I was driving back from Florida in January, I got an email from Cambridge saying that they wanted to schedule an interview with me that week, which was so exciting. I had a really great interview. It was only like half an hour with one of the professors in the technology policy department at Cambridge. Obviously, it was over Skype. It was a great interview. Honestly, when I hung up the Zoom call, I knew I'd gotten in. And a few weeks later, I did get my acceptance letter to Cambridge, which I was so excited about. Then around early February, I got an invitation from Hopkins Center for Bioengineering, Innovation, and Design to do a Skype interview call, which I did, and that was with a prof there who was from Toronto, funnily enough, so that was cool because he knew about Queen's and he knew the Canadian university landscape, so that was just very lucky for me, as well as one of their current fellows, which is what I am now. Oh, ha ha ha, I just spoiled it. As well as one of their current fellows, and so that was again, like 20-minute Skype interview. Obviously did a lot of research on past projects that had gone on at Hopkins. I was really interested in this project that they did about the opioid epidemic. It was an undergrad project that had like a pill capsule where when they were overdue, they automatically dissolved. Anyways, the opioid epidemic has always been something super interesting to me and how technology can help there. But I talked a lot about that. I talked a lot about health equity. It was a really good conversation, and they seemed very positive and interested in what I had to say. So then, I think it was sometime in February, I got the email from MIT saying, no, sorry, you did not get in, which, considering I hadn't had like an interview experience or anything with them, and my GRE scores were not that good, and I also sent them one of my reference letters from like a supervisor, I was like, okay, I mean, I had very much wanted that, but looking back on it, I don't think it would have been a good fit at all, and I'm very glad that they realized that and rejected me. I think that it is a very good thing that they rejected me. So very soon after that though, I was invited to Hopkins for a second interview, which was basically a design day hackathon. So we were to visit the campus to hear some talks, meet some current students, and then do like a group activity hackathon for like 5-6 hours to work on a project. Unfortunately, the day that this hackathon was scheduled for, I already had flights out to Alberta to go skiing. So I told them, sorry man, like I cannot come to your interview. So I just did it over Skype. That is totally okay for this program. This year we had multiple people on Skype. I was on some of those calls. I'll be on more Skype calls, I'm sure. It was fine. And then I found out that I got into the Hopkins CBID program. Unfortunately, they told me that I had 10 days to accept this offer. If you're thinking you only had 10 days to accept it, oh my God, that's crazy, you must have been on the wait list. That is not the case. Not that there's anything at all wrong with being accepted off a wait list for a great school like Hopkins, but that program started at the end of May. It was March, and knowing what I know now, they were having some like administration transitions, so the email did not go out to any of my classmates, so we had no time to decide at all. None of us did. Basically, I was very lucky. My parents booked me like a last-minute crazy flight to Hopkins so I could check out the campus and have a bit of the experience that the kids who did the interview got to have. And that was that. I also sent off a very frantic email to Delft Engineering and Policy Analysis and said, I have another offer I have to accept. Did I get into this program? And they emailed me back and they said, yes, you got into Delft. So then I had a decision to make. I hadn't heard from some of these other programs. It turns out that I would eventually get rejected from Stanford. I would get into UBC and I would get into the Embedded Systems program. Again, I don't even remember getting rejected from Stanford. I don't even remember what I applied for. Like, it's possible they didn't even send me an email. I just really wish I hadn't spent the $200 applying there because I have zero memory of any of it. And I don't think I even wanted to be in that program, so if you're not sure you want to be in a program and you don't think you can get in, don't spend the money. I could have spent that $200 on like cake or a bike or something, you know what I mean? I had this like crazy 10-day decision to make. I had the option between Cambridge for Technology Policy, which was a Master's of Philosophy, Johns Hopkins for a Master's of Science and Engineering for Bioengineering, Innovation, and Design with the cool like clinical immersion and travel aspects of it, and then Delft for the Engineering Policy and Analysis, which was also a super cool 2-year program where you lived in The Hague, which was, The Hague is where they do like all of these crazy trials and stuff. It sounded like an amazing place to be for policy. I decided I didn't want to give up completely on engineering. And I decided that I thought that because the Johns Hopkins program, it does focus a lot on front-end innovation, which means discovering needs, defining problems, finding the best solutions to those problems. It's not like about how to do mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or anything like that. There is nothing technical in this program besides 2 electives that you have to do. And with the opportunity to do 2 months of clinical immersions in a hospital and to visit hospitals in a global setting in lower middle income countries and see those different health systems, it just seemed like an opportunity that I would never get again and that I couldn't experience anywhere else. So I ended up choosing Hopkins. Now, was this the right decision? Given what ended up happening in 2020 and how a lot of people who were abroad had problems with visas or freaked out and had to come home, I do think that I was in the best place because I'm not sure how well I would have done being so far away from family and support systems and having to come back during this crazy 2020 experience. Obviously, I would have been able to do the fall semester and then like half of the spring, but I think it worked out very well. I did find out later that I got a full scholarship to Delft, so financially, it might have been the better option. But altogether, it was what I chose, and I've gotten a tremendous value out of it, met wonderful people, had incredible experiences. So it was kind of all worth it in the end. The crazy GRE and all the personal statements and everything like that. So I hope that was fairly cogent. It is a very long process to explain how everything went. There were so many schools. Now, I applied to so many because I had applied to a few top schools. I mean, MIT, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, Cambridge were kind of the top tier, and my top 3 were, well, my top 3 were MIT, Johns Hopkins, and Cambridge. So I got 2 out of my top 3, which is great. But all of those schools are actually very good schools, so I wanted to spread out my applications in a sort of diverse way to ensure that I got in somewhere. If you're like, it doesn't sound like you really did anything safety-wise, it's because I figured if I didn't get into a program that I liked, if I didn't get into one of those programs that was super exciting to me, I would just get a job and not bother spending the money. So that is my grad school application experience story. If you are watching this and you are new here and you liked this, please click subscribe. Definitely let me know if there's other things. I will definitely make more content regarding grad school applications, especially when I'm on the admissions committee. I mean, those are technically, what's the word? Confidential, but general tips and things that I've observed about what it's like, I can definitely share. As well as if you have any questions, let me know below in the comments. This has been super fun to kind of relive and chat about, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Nicole Wilbur. See you next time.